Welcome to Things My Mother Forgot to Mention.
The podcast where we say everything our mothers didn't.
I'm Jan, a trauma therapist and author turned rogue storyteller, here to talk openly about the body, aging, and all the, wait, what? Moments of womanhood.
And I'm Patti, an online business and tech nerd whose purpose is to elevate the voices of women in our world and who doesn't believe in taboo topics. Things My Mother Forgot to Mention is the podcast for every woman who's ever said, wait, why didn't anyone mention this to me?
Join Jan and Patti, two outspoken, curious, outrageous women, as they dive headfirst into a messy, magical, and often WTF realities of aging, health, and quite simply being a woman.
From rogue chin hairs and vaginal thinning
to mental health, perimenopause, and scalp cancer. Yes, really.
Nothing is off limits. It's funny, it's raw, it's real talk your mother definitely skipped.
Let's get into it.
Hi, Jan.
Hey there, Patti. How's it going?
Pretty good. How's it going with you?
Well, the summer is here, and it's going to be 100 degrees here in Boston.
Really?
Yes, we're going into a heat wave. So finally, summer has appeared.
Nice. Yeah, it's been in the 90s here. It's supposed to be in the upper 90s here. And I was just reading this morning, we're getting a Saharan dust coming in or something. So apparently by this afternoon, this evening, we'll have hazy skies here
Oh my.
tomorrow.
Do you have to wear a mask? I don't know. I mean, to breathe all that dust or dust.
I don't know how thick it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be like I'm walking through a desert necessarily, but I think it's going to be more like just hazy, but I'm not going anywhere, so I'll be fine, I think, but
yeah.
Yeah, but otherwise, I'm going to share something not related to our topic, but just in the interest of our TMI conversations that we have. I had my annual physical a couple weeks ago, and my doctor said I'm 45, so guess who's getting their first colonoscopy?
Oh, really? At 45 now, they've dropped the age?
45, so next week I have to.
How fun.
I'm very excited. I'm not at all.
Well, they do give you good drugs to, on the category of drugs to put you just slightly asleep so you don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's not so bad.
I hear the prep is pretty not fun.
Yeah, the prep is, you think you're losing lots of weight, but it's just gutting you. That's all it's doing.
So, looking forward to that. But anyway.
Well, good for you. Welcome to the community.
Yes, thank you so much. My sister-in-law was saying something like, welcome, it's brown here.
Now I can tell you, if you pay a little extra money, you can get the shorter prep, which is less to drink compared to the one that they give you, which is probably covered by insurance. And I didn't know that because you have to get to the pharmacy and it's this liquid.
I have it already. Yeah.
Okay. And there's ones that you have to drink like a gallon. And then there's another one that's just a small amount.
Though when the person from the hospital or doctor's office or somebody called me about it, specifically, they said they don't do it the old way anymore and that it's just a little quick thing. So it's like I have to do it at like 6 or 8 p.m. and then I have to wake up at 4 and do it. But she said,
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before it used to be like you had to drink like a gallon of this.
Yeah. No, I think you just drink it and then you have to drink like 32 ounces of water or 20 something ounces of water.
Good.
Afterwards or something. So
well,
there you go.
You'll have to tell me all about it later.
I will. But today we're going to talk about something, not that, but we're going to talk about drugs.
Yeah.
And specifically, both you and I, Jan, have had some experiences in our youth with psychedelics and things like that. And so for me, it was very transformative in my life, the drugs that I did and the way that I did them. And so with research coming out about it more and more and people being aware of the impacts, we thought we would talk about our experience with psychedelics and their impacts on mental health.
Well, I think, before we decided to record this, I was telling you what makes me very different is the years that I grew up in.
Hmm.
I grew up in the 60s and the 70s. And that was the years when it was free love. Everybody grew their hair down to their waist. Everybody was smoking dope, just out in front of everybody, doing all kinds of drugs, getting really messed up. But it was like, free love.
Yeah.
As the AIDS epidemic came in, it was a very tumultuous time.
Yeah.
Vietnam, this was the end of the Vietnam War. So this is
Hmm.
where I came in and everything was experimental. And the more you experimented, the more fun you were having.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we're not in that exactly that age, but we do still have problems with fentanyl use for people overdosing and dying. And I think we've been looking at that and also for, people who are addicts. Not in like with marijuana or which is mostly legal in most of the states now.
Hmm.
It's drugs like cocaine
Yeah.
or fentanyl or
Meth.
meth. Yes, crystal
Hmm.
meth.
Heroin. Yeah.
And those are the ones where it goes into addiction, mental health issues,
Right.
and it is really problematic.
Right.
And
Right.
we were going to talk not just only about that, especially, as I just was sharing a little bit about myself. I had my knee replaced, partial knee replacement 5 weeks ago. And the drugs that they gave you were Dilaudid, which is like 10 times stronger than taking any kind of morphine. And people can get hooked on those,
Yeah.
because it's an easy thing to do. And we hear about movie stars all the time with their drug addicts, not like cocaine,
Yeah.
but they're
Pills.
doing pills. It's all prescription. So, so it's a whole vast range of changing our reality, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Recreational, medical, and mental health and addictions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I think so it's important, as we talk about this, I think we want to talk about it responsibly as well and note
Exactly.
that, when we're going to talk about some of our experiences, we were younger and we were maybe in some circumstances doing them intentionally, some circumstances not doing them intentionally, but that ultimately if you're going to be taking something that you do it intentionally and with medical support, especially if you're taking a psychedelic for mental health purposes or anything like that, because that research does exist
Hmm.
and it's really impactful. And so, kind of talking about, I wanted to make sure we did a little bit of research too, to talk about before we maybe share like our own experiences, just to share a little bit about kind of the history of
Sure.
psychedelics and their use in mental health. And so, just like you're saying, like psilocybin and LSD were starting to be studied in the 1950s and the 1960s. And they were mostly studied as treatments for alcoholism as well as other conditions. But in 1966 is when they started getting banned. And
Right.
1970 was the Substances Act, which started classifying those drugs and psilocybin as having high potential use for abuse. And so they didn't accept them for medical purposes. And
Hmm.
so at that point, everybody had been taking them pretty freely leading up to that.
Right.
And then they became illegal to have. And so, but we all know that it's all been around and you can find it if you want
Right.
it.
Right. If you really want it.
Yeah, and so it was a Canadian psychiatrist or Canadian psychiatric researchers developed a treatment known as psychedelic therapy, and that was in the 1950s. Again, that was initially created to treat chronic alcoholism, and they would do that by administering a single large dose of LSD in a controlled, supportive environment. And the early reports of that was like 50% success rate with
Wow.
people struggling with chronic treatment resistant cases of substance use disorders. So they've really seen a lot of support in that and results from that. And there were during the 1940s to the 1960s, there were more than 1,000 published clinical papers that detailed experiments with these substances. And then once everything kind of shut down, it just stopped. And you
Hmm.
didn't see any more research on
Right.
it.
It all went under.
It all went under. So now, around 2000, they received approval to give high doses of psilocybin to volunteers who were healthy. And so now, 1 year after receiving psilocybin assisted therapy for major depressive disorders, 75% of participants showed clinical treatment response, which is a reduction of symptom severity by
Mhm.
50% or more,
Wow.
and 58% were considered in remission. And so a lot of this stuff with psilocybin, especially, right, which are mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, as people
Right.
also
Mhm.
know them, are really helpful in treating that. I don't have a lot of information on ketamine. We're going to have somebody come on to our
Right.
podcast who does
Alyssa.
that
Mhm.
work and talk about ketamine specifically. But other things like MDMA assisted psychotherapy produces lasting symptom relief in 71% of veterans and first responders with PTSD at about 12 months after they've received it. So it's pretty, it's pretty powerful. And the main thing that happens is their effects go in through affecting your serotonin receptors, and it increases the neuroplasticity and alters the connectivity between your brain networks.
Hmm.
And so it looks like, as they research what is happening in your brain, they appear to create new neural pathways that interrupt those really deep patterns
Right.
that we
Uh-huh.
have shooting.
Which is the trauma. So it's good for
Exactly.
trauma survivors. Yep.
Exactly. So I think the big thing is, and why the questions remain around some of the research and everything, is because it's been outlawed and all this stuff. It's hard to get consistent research and results
Right.
because we're not doing these experiments and tests on large scales. So that's a lot of the sort of negative side
Hmm.
to it, and the criticism that a lot of this research gets as well. It's not very widespread, and so these are very small trials. So, therefore the results can't be widely agreed with and all of that. So they're all things to think about, but I just think it's important to understand that when we talk about this stuff, it's been drugs that have been researched for a very long time at this point, and there's been a lot of research that show a lot of really positive results for people, especially those who have anxiety, depression, substance issues, and things like that.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And I know of like the treatment of MDMA.
Hmm.
A colleague of mine actually went to someone, which it was all assisted. So
Hmm.
she had sessions with this person and then did a whole day long of MDMA
Yeah.
while this person was there and in the room and helped facilitating it. So, and then had a follow-up. And she said it was life-changing for her.
Yeah.
And she said it was life-changing because she felt like the ego, and I'm talking terms people
Yep.
know Freud, but it's that part of us that's always in control. The ego wants what it wants, and it gets actually out of the way, she
Yep.
said. And she had this experience of being more open to everything. And I think, now if it's not assisted by some clinician, I mean, being vulnerable like that is a very dangerous thing.
Correct.
And that's why Alyssa, who we're going to have speak on our podcast, she talks about the importance of being assisted any sessions
Yeah.
rather than just someone doing it by themselves or
Right.
going off or, in
Right.
a big group, everyone lies down and takes it. And so that's what creates a safe space for people to
Hmm.
work in. So that's exciting. I think it's exciting. I mean, this world of psychotherapy and now using drug assisted, I think is really changing quite a bit. And it's very
Yeah.
exciting. Some people probably look at it and poo-poo it.
Yeah.
And yet I think that the results will be there and it's a way to help people that we haven't been able to reach.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, so sort of talking about our own experiences, do you want to share yours or do you want me to start with mine? What you want me to go? Okay.
Oh,
So for me, I love what you just said because I had very similar experience using MDMA myself. And so I will say that My experiences, I was in my early 20s, early to mid 20s, and I was not in controlled experiences and situations, and I didn't have a medical practitioner. However, when I was taking these things, so I experimented with MDMA, LSD, psilocybin, and marijuana. And when I was taking, MDMA, LSD, psilocybin, mostly with my friends, like an intimate group of friends. And a lot of times we did it at home. And so
Yeah.
that was a really safe
Safe, safe.
space. And
Hmm.
we would sit and we would talk and we would process and things like that. And so that was really helpful. But I remember my first time, so kind of the history leading up to it a little bit um, for context is that I've talked a little bit before about me having anxiety and I had
Hmm.
agoraphobia. I didn't leave the house for 6 months. And so it wasn't too long after that when I started being able to be in the world again. I had my brothers, I have an older and a younger brother that I was living with, and they were taking drugs and they had started taking MDMA. And so I actually, the very first time I took it with them and a couple of their friends in our basement at home, at our mom's house. And it was very powerful for me. Um, like you said, the ego kind of went away. So one of my biggest challenges with the agoraphobia was always stressing about people judging me and seeing I didn't like being perceived. And that was very hard for me. And I remember one of the biggest things that I kept hearing in my head was nobody cares. And it was in the way of not that nobody cares about me, but that everybody was so busy focusing on themselves that
Hmm.
nobody was looking at me and judging me in all these ways that I was worrying
Hmm.
about because they were doing the same thing to themselves.
Hmm.
And that moment, the voice was so loud and it was so clean and it was so clear and it felt very freeing for me because I understood something just from a different perspective. It allowed me to have this new perspective on everyone and everything around me. And I was like, oh, I'm a little thing in a sea of other things. And not that I'm not important, but I'm not as important to all these people and these stories that I think I am. And it allowed me to be myself more, and it allowed me to come out of my shell more, and it allowed me it helped with my anxiety,
Hmm.
honestly. And it stuck with me to this day, obviously, that's
Yeah,
still
that I mean,
something
lasting change is what I was going to ask. Wow.
completely so. It was so powerful. And on top of that, doing it with my brothers, which people always think about ecstasy and they think about it in like, oh, you want to touch everything. And that's true. It's very sensational but we bonded and
Hmm.
we had deep conversations. And I had done it another time with my younger brother, just the two of us. And we had such powerful conversations and we had a lot of animosity between the two of us that we hadn't talked through and or that he had with
Wow.
me that I didn't really know. And he had questions about our past that he didn't understand because he was the baby and when all of our trauma happened, and so he
Hmm.
was protected and didn't understand a lot of what happened. And
Hmm.
we just sat under a tree and just talked about
Hmm.
everything. And he's like, "What happened?" And I was like, "What?" And we just talked and shared, and we developed a bond that has not been broken. And he became one of my very best friends.
Oh, wow.
And it's,
And this is from the one time, or how many times did
that
you
would
do
be this was the second time just he and I just went out
it? Hmm.
together with it.
I
And
see.
so that was my experience with it is I would sit with my friends or I would take it in these environments. And of course, I took it in forest parties or at Burning Man and things like that as well, which were all powerful experiences, but it was the ones at home that were very intentional
Right.
and
Relational one-on-one.
connected.
Hmm.
Yeah, with or we'd sit with my group of friends and we would all sit in a circle and go around and say what we liked, what each of us liked about everybody. And it was just this healing, powerful experience that yeah, when I was going into that, I had ever since I was in high school and my anxiety started, I had a lump in my throat and it just never went away. And I just all the time had it after my first panic attack and I just lived with it. And during the process of me experimenting with particularly MDMA and psilocybin, it just disappeared. at some point
Mm.
and never came back. And so I think that those were very powerful things for me. Like it
Yeah.
really changed everything and all of the anxiety that I had and the agoraphobia really, I still deal with anxiety, of course, but nothing like it was before. And it just allowed me to feel a connectedness.
Mm.
And I think more than anything, it's a perspective shift. And the
Mm-hmm.
perspective shift, and like you said, it pulls your ego aside
Mm-hmm.
and it allows you to feel a connection. Psilocybin does that especially. I did it in nature when I would do it, and I felt very connected to the earth and to the people around me. And I remember I just sat next to a river and sobbed at one time and just let feelings out. And another time I did a microdose by myself with a little picture of younger me. And I just
Mm-hmm.
sat with myself and I talked to myself and I said I was sorry and I said that I was here now as an adult to take care of me and like really held me. And this was just in my bedroom by myself. I put on some
Mm-hmm.
music and I just took a little bit of psilocybin and had this experience. And it was so beautiful and it was so powerful. And at the end, and I will swear on everything, like the smile in the picture of this little girl got big and freed. And it was just so, like, I'm trying not to cry as I talk about this stuff because it was so impactful
Mm-hmm.
to me and these it changed my life, all of these things, and they allowed me to be connected to myself, to be connected to people around me. And though I haven't done anything in 20 years, it all remains.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that connectedness
That's
still, and
great.
I'm
20
able
years
to
and it
remember
still
those things.
remains.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. I
great.
mean, let's be real. I did it a lot. But
Okay.
but
The big question is where do you get how I mean, for me, I'm just thinking, how did you do it
yeah.
safely, like getting the mescaline or the MDMA?
Yeah, so well, the mescaline I took accidentally at Burning Man. That was a different experience. But
Mm.
the LSD and the MDMA and the psilocybin, I was in San Francisco and in
Yeah.
Northern California, so the
Were you
access was very different there. Also marijuana there very different than you can get in a lot of places.
sure.
And so I had trusted friends that knew people who either grew or created or whatever or were just so I had good sources like that. I never was finding random people to get things from. And so um yeah, that for me was trusted
Wow.
sources.
So you were in your 20s when you were doing this, your late
Hmm.
20s?
Yeah,
Yeah.
20. I did my first, I think I did MDMA the first time. I think I was 20 to 21, something around there.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then probably continued to do things through maybe 25 or
Yeah.
so, 25, 26 at
Mm-hmm.
the latest, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stopped doing my life, my living situation changed and just things changed. So I didn't really, I think probably, yeah. Yeah, probably 25, 26. I stopped really
Yeah.
doing much.
Hmm.
And not long after that, I stopped smoking marijuana as well because I smoked, I'll be honest, I smoked a lot of marijuana for a long time. I was a teenager when I started smoking it.
Sure.
Again, accessibility in San Francisco was very strong. And I got to a point where my brain didn't like it anymore. And when
Mm.
I would get stoned, and that was very recreational. I did it regularly, but I started beating myself up. I started being really mean to
Negative
myself
talk.
anytime
Yeah.
I would take,
Yeah.
and I was just like, this isn't fun. Like, I don't like
No,
this. And I
forget
stopped,
it.
and that was that.
Yeah.
And I've just
Well,
never,
the thing about marijuana is that for young brains, it's not great because the young brain is not fully myelinized till they're saying even 24 now.
yeah,
And so when you start messing with it, teenagers getting a hold of it, it
yeah,
does interrupt the synapses, the growth of the brain, the connections, and
yeah.
it worries me. I mean, that's all. So I never did that in high school. I
Right.
never
Yeah.
did it when I was in my early 20s because I was married then to
Right.
my first husband who was a minister, and we're in a very conservative church. So
Yeah.
I was out being good and perfect is what I was doing.
Right. Yeah. So when
And
did you start? Yeah, go ahead.
so then, after I left my husband, it was probably like and my father passed away. I think I was maybe 24, 25 when he died. And then kind of everything came loose, the lid came off and
Yeah,
I got divorced and my brother lived in Arizona and was very active in the community of growing marijuana.
yeah,
And because of that, he had a lot of connections where, selling all kinds of MDMA and, cocaine and stuff like that. So whenever I would be around him and I'd visit him, that's when I would dabble, like I never tried anything before. So I never really, and I'm happy, I never got into any big habit of,
yeah.
like,
Right.
regularly doing it. I think, I tried to, dabble, find out what the experience is like even with mushrooms and psilocybin mushrooms and marijuana and cocaine. And that was about the extent of it, and because I am sensitive to any of those things. And
Mm,
I think that probably when I was then a flight attendant in the airlines, I kind of, rather than smoking cigarettes, of course, I would smoke marijuana occasionally, hanging out. And it's one thing I have to say, and if people are listening to this, is that you have to, whenever you're experimenting with drugs, like I know some of my friends have never done that,
mhm.
never, ever with anything, except for maybe antibiotics, but from the doctor is that you have to be able to let
Yeah.
go of control
Hmm.
because once the drug has you, it's giving you its journey that you're going to get, maybe
Yes.
put it that way.
Hmm.
And if you are freaked out and you're hating it or fighting it, you're going to be miserable. So that's
Hmm.
why it's nice to do it with friends who
Yep.
will be safe and create an environment and be aware and help you rather than you going off on your own, and having some trip and being in a nightmare. So,
You're right. Yeah. And I'll speak to that because for me, one of the things from my past being what it was is I may or may not have some control issues. And so one of the things that with MDMA specifically is there's a period of time when it first starts to come on that you are noticeably losing your control of your reality. And so I in the very beginning, when I was first taking it, I had a really hard time at that point.
mhm.
And I would start to have panic attacks sometimes
Yep, yep,
because I'd
yep.
be like,
Yep,
ah,
that's
and
it.
this one time I went actually with my brothers, this was quite an experience that I don't recommend. But I went to like a rave hours away. I think it was New Year's or something with my brothers. So this was not doing it in a safe and intentional space and we were inside and music and lights and all this stuff and a lot of people which I was still newly out of agoraphobia so it was a lot and I took it and as it was starting to come on no
Oh,
ma'am that did not go well and so I said I have to leave and so my little brother came out with me little he was like a year younger than me let's be clear so we
right.
left
It wasn't like five.
yeah. Come on, little guy, let's go. So we went out to my car and in the parking lot, and I made myself vomit, which not a good idea because it was already hitting, it was in my system if I was
Mhm,
already feeling that, but I wasn't, I was panicking. And so all that did was make me feel awful.
mhm,
And I just literally sat in the car and here's an experience of why things can go poorly and you
mhm.
have to be careful. My brother had actually gotten something from the party instead of what we brought.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
laced with something. He was starting to
Oh,
hallucinate in the car, decided to go back into the party, and I'm sitting in the car with people breaking into cars around me. Like I called my mother, my poor mother,
oh, poor thing.
and was just like, I'm freaking
The
out. Like, I need you to be
journey gone
calm.
wrong. Hmm.
Yeah, and so this is an experience of it not right. That wasn't a good experience. That wasn't maybe a smart way to do that. And so, but that's what it would be like for me. And it took a while for me to get to a point where I was like, okay, I know that this part is coming when I would do it in safe environments. And I would say, okay, I know this letting go of control part is coming. I just need to breathe through it. And that was
Hmm.
another thing that I learned with these substances was I learned to be so much more in touch with my body. Like meditation wasn't something I could ever possibly do before, but through that, I was able to learn to just be present and feel my body or feel music or and I still have a hard time meditating. My brain's all over the place, but I can drop into my body much more easily and feel much more in touch with my body. And so that was really helpful. But I agree with you 100%. Like if you're not comfortable letting go of control and you're not in a safe environment, I wouldn't, it's not good.
Yeah.
It
And
can be a negative
now that the
experience.
government, not the government, the state government that now allows different states to have marijuana legal,
Yeah.
they have certain standards that they test things,
Right.
and you have to list how much THC is in it.
Hmm.
And here in Massachusetts, any gummy you get is only 5 milligrams, so it's you're not going to be getting some big, huge dose
Right.
because Joe's mom in the kitchen made some that are
Right.
like real killers for you or something.
Right.
And
Right.
that's how it used to be.
Yeah.
It was all
Yeah.
done
Yeah.
in the basement kitchen, and so I'm just advocating for people who have never done any experiences to
Hmm.
do it with assisted, and
Absolutely.
to really expect that this could happen, and to be helped through that
Yeah.
whole process, because I do think that marijuana trips and MDMA trips and ketamine do help with mental health. And so,
Yeah.
and for some people, recreational, that there is two different kinds of marijuana that they do mix. And one
Yeah.
is a marijuana that is, um, it's more of a downer. It's
Hmm.
kind of helps you sleep. And then the other one is that makes you happy and kind of party like.
Yeah.
So there's many mixes that are out there too to be
Hmm.
aware of.
Yeah.
So,
And if you're looking at doing it yourself and going to, one of the stores or anything, if you're in a place, not Texas, that it's legal and you can go into a store and buy it.
Massachusetts.
Yeah, you can talk to the people there because they're educated and they're knowledgeable, and you can tell them, "Hey, I've never done this before," or "This is what I want to experience," or "I tend to get anxious," and they'll help you
Hmm.
find the things that and the types and strains that are good for you, you know.
Hmm.
The other thing too is, something that, in my 40s when I guess it was in my 30s actually when I started taking antidepressants that there was a part of me that really sat with, you know, I was self-medicating. That's the other reality of even though those experiences changed my life and I wouldn't exchange them for anything. I recognized afterwards, first, I was like, the fact that my anxiety then surged for, years after I stopped taking it all. Is it because I've messed with my brain chemicals so much and my serotonin and my dopamine? And,
Hmm.
I didn't take it a few times. So, I definitely, probably played with that. But I also recognized that for me doing it as much as I had been, I was self-medicating. I wasn't addicted to it. I wasn't, reliant on it. But I was choosing to use something to get out of myself and to
Sure.
to do things. And so I think it's good to be careful and aware of those things as well as when we're choosing to self-medicate versus self-growth. And I think it can be, a little bit of both, but I think doing it very intentionally, I support that because I think it can be really beautiful and amazing. But do we need to do it maybe as much as Patty did in her 20s? Probably not. And I think that that was definitely a way for me to not feel certain things and to, you know, get away from certain feelings.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of, I can't remember the gentleman's name who's written books, and he's on our channel too here, which is an educational channel. And he wrote about psilocybin, about MDMA, about marijuana, and
Hmm.
Michael Pollan, there it is,
Hmm.
Michael Pollan, and those books and his series on GBH are I think are very informative and talk about research for people who, are interested in knowing more before they just dive in,
Yeah.
because maybe they don't want to dive in and have that experience you have.
No, no. And I agree. And I think that also, again, always, I'm not now, which, can feel like a hypocrite a little bit of like, I'm not advocating for people to go and do all of that. And especially now, like, if you don't know where you're getting something, don't do it because the things they can be laced with, and it's, I probably wasn't always the safest as I could have been in situations. I was in my early 20s, my mid
Yeah,
20s. So like,
gosh,
you know, I wasn't always making the smartest decisions, but it's dangerous and it can be dangerous. And so I think knowing where it's coming from is very important. And again, there are people who therapists who will do this work and do medicine work and
hmm
this healing work with you and with these substances that are really powerful. And I mean, there are doctors who subscribe ketamine. I know somebody who
sure,
did ketamine therapy here in Texas, and so that was legal, and she was able to do some sessions for her therapy because she was dealing with a lot of complex PTSD, and
sure.
so that was helpful for her to do the ketamine therapy.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, ketamine, I think, is a useful drug. I mean, Alyssa, when we do have her on, has told me a lot about it. I even considered going and watching her, or actually having the experience with
Yeah.
her. Then she took a training, of course, for practitioners. But what she talks about is just she sees the big change for people,
Yeah.
and even in ketamine, when it's assisted, there's just that extra of someone helping you integrate what's coming up for you rather than you
Right.
kind of like, flying along
Yeah.
by yourself. So I
Yeah.
think that you can do it alone or you can do it. And I asked her and she said, with marijuana, they ask them to bring their own marijuana. They don't have a certain one, but
Mm.
ketamine, they have it's checked out by their nurse practitioner. There's a whole assessment that's done before you
Wow.
get to it. So yeah, and I know my son who is in the ER doc, he uses ketamine for people because, I was just thinking it's the fight flight response. When people
Hmm.
are into fight and they're like screaming, he said this one woman was like really like fighting him, and he administered ketamine, and she calmed right down and was able to talk to him about what was going on. So,
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
amazing things when they're used well, and sometimes people don't use them well. And there's addiction, but then there's times when people use them and it's recreational. And what's wrong with having some fun
Right?
sometimes?
I mean, I
Keeping it
agree with that
moderate.
also. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Especially if, again, I think it's all about the intention. It's all about, if you're not doing it all the time, you're not doing it to escape and run, but like it's okay to have fun. It's okay
hmm
to play with things and stuff. And I would definitely, I mean, I've thought about now, again, I don't think I would sit and do it by myself and eat like, it's not something, but I would absolutely consider, I feel like I could use a little like reconnect,
Right,
and
right, right.
just to have a session or something and do it with a practitioner and somebody intentionally that I can process that with, because I think that's a really important piece you said is being able to not just have this experience, but then take what you
Process it.
experienced,
Yeah, yeah.
those, like, I wonder how much more quickly I would have processed some of that if I was able
Yeah,
to
yeah.
sit down and talk immediately afterwards with somebody about that as opposed to whatever I was doing the
Mhm.
next day and going about my business. But to process some of these thoughts and these revelations, because there are a lot of revelations, there's a lot
Yes.
of when you put down your walls, we're very smart and we're very
Mhm.
aware and we're very in tune. And it's so much of the noise of our everyday that gets in the
Right.
way. And this just allows you to hear yourself and hear those and the world around you in a different way.
Mhm. And I also think there's like medicinal properties
Hmm.
besides for mental health.
Yeah.
There's pain management. I know
Yes.
when I
Also
had my
true.
back fused together and I was in pain all the time, I use gummies rather than
Hmm.
using narcotics because I didn't
Yeah.
want to get stuck on narcotics. And so you can use that, or when I used to work with anorexics on a unit, they used to use marijuana so they'd have an appetite. So,
Mm, yeah.
you know, so
Right.
there's many uses,
Cancer patients, a lot
cancer
of cancer
patients for
patients, that's
pain.
a big thing too. Marijuana that helps
Exactly.
with pain and appetite.
And appetite. So there's some positive things that have come out of it and fun.
Absolutely.
And then there's also the other side. Isn't that how life is?
That
There's
is how
always
life
two
is.
sides.
It's
It
always a
is.
balance.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Finding where that middle is, not living on those extremes.
Right. Yeah. You can dip your toe in an extreme and then go back to the center, and that's okay.
Right. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Well, good. I mean, I think resource wise, I think we've talked about it. Just do some research. Feel free to go out and, we'll put some, websites or information in the resources that might be helpful. But don't be afraid to, especially if some of these things are legal in wherever you
Right.
live. Talk to your doctor, talk to a therapist, or do some research and look for. A lot of times they'll call themselves medicine healers or medicine guides and things like that
Mhm.
because it's not always comfortable to say, specifically, openly, I'm a psilocybin guide or something like
Right,
that.
because they're still
So,
illegal. Right.
right. So I think looking for people who might use that terminology can be a way to find them and work with them. But I
Make
know,
sure you put down Michael Pollan. I'm just looking at
yes.
all of his books here. He has his latest book is This Is Your Mind on Plants, and he goes through plant-based derived drugs for
Yeah.
and he's well known. He's written like 6 books. But like I said, do research, find resources
Yeah.
to people, which is
Yeah.
important.
And there's still people that do ayahuasca, and that's very
Yeah.
intentional and very ritualistic and spiritual. And people have life-changing experiences with ayahuasca. I've never done that before. That would be something I would do. So there's a lot out there that's proven, and I mean that's a cultural thing that's been used for generations and generations, in
Mhm.
Native American
I
communities
know.
especially.
I
And
know.
so there's a reason. There's a reason that that was in use and used intentionally. And so I think that's a great example of the ways that we could be using other things. So,
Right, right.
yeah,
Rather than Americanize everything and making it sterile and stuff.
like we do,
Like
you
we
know.
do, like we do. Anyway,
Yeah.
so,
Well, thanks, Jan.
well,
Thanks for
thanks,
sharing.
Patty. Yeah, well, thank you for letting me know a little more about you. And I didn't know all that, so
Yeah.
I'm
Well, there
glad
you
you
go.
had some very positive experiences in there. So
Yeah, me too. I'm glad you
mine
do
were
also.
mostly just fun. We were just out there. I just want to have girls who just want to have fun. That's where mine was.
Yeah. But I mean, you are open-minded, and I'm sure that some of that came from some of that as well.
Mhm. Yeah,
So, all
thanks.
right. Thanks, Jan.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you like what you've heard, please share it with friends, subscribe, and leave a review.
And remember, information shared on this podcast is not medical advice. If you have a concern about your physical or mental health, please seek support from a professional.
If you have a story you'd like to share about things your mother forgot to mention, you can apply to be a guest.
We'd also love to hear a quick 90-second thing you've learned in your life.
You can find links to both of those over at our website at
thingsmymotherforgottomention.com or in the show notes.
Thank you.